Well, here's an interesting thing that's sort of related. A little bit of jurisdiction shopping or placing of companies and products continues, and Texas is very hot in this regard. BlackRock and Citadel are backing a new stock exchange to take on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ duopoly. So according to the Wall Street Journal, the exchange would be based in Texas and called the Texas Stock Exchange, or the TXSE. They've raised $120 million so far. That seems like a low number. And the general pitch here is the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ have become expensive, and they've been increasing their compliance costs. NASDAQ has a new board diversity target that went into effect at the start of this year, all the DEI stuff. And so this exchange is pitching itself as a CEO-friendly and the anti-woke exchange. So here's the planned timeline: file an SEC registration docs later this year, start facilitating trades next year, host the first new listing in 2026. Interesting, I guess, that Citadel and BlackRock are in this group because they could bring a lot of business, obviously. And you know some of this other stuff that's been going on with Texas. Texas is now Tesla's corporate headquarters. They moved it from Palo Alto in California to Texas in 2021. Your thoughts here, Chamath, on moving?
Love it.
The stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay, why? Why do you love it so much, Chamath? Tell me. Competition?
I do think that it's hard right now for companies to get access to capital. I think more diverse and more flexible ways where smart investors can allocate their money into the ideas that they want are better. I think that the duopoly hasn't created enough competition. So the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange haven't innovated. And in fact, they've probably been a little regressive in terms of filing requirements, listing requirements, in terms of board composition. They've fallen for a bunch of things that don't actually point to the economic rationale or value in a company. And so I think if you have a third player, there's a chance that more competition will create more rational behavior, which will flow into the companies themselves. So I'm a huge fan of this. I think that the stock exchanges right now are too brittle. And that large reason is because there's only two of them.
Friedberg, any thoughts for you about more options?
Well, I think part of this is actually, there's been these rules imposed by NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange that have tried to enforce upon the listed companies rules and regulations that are not tied to securities laws, including some of these aspects of diversity of your board. And I know that there have been a lot of public company board members and CEOs that have quietly tried to push back on these rules, that they're imposing social systems upon, what is effectively a regulated exchange. And so there's certainly like an interest in a pushing for a competitive marketplace for exchanges. There was a survey done recently that showed, I got to find some of this data, but it showed the cost of going public on NASDAQ, Amex, or the New York Stock Exchange was about $7.4 million. Cost of going public through an over-the-counter bulletin board listing service was about $2 million. And then there's these additional kind of rules that are being imposed if you want to be listed on the big boards. So clearly there's interest, and it's great to see a competitive market emerge. There have been other attempts. There's that long-term stock exchange. You guys remember that a couple of years ago?
Yeah,
that was meant to kind of incentivize long-term holdings. There was 2 other equity security exchanges, efforts made in the last couple of years that didn't take off. So this isn't super novel in terms of like seeing a new challenger exchange step up, but I think more competition is always better.